Everyone remembers Harry's sacrifice. He walked into the forest. He chose death. He did it alone, in the dark, with no one watching. That is the story. That is the one we tell. But here is what we do not talk about. Hermione Granger made her sacrifice in the summer before year 7 in her childhood bedroom, with her parents sitting downstairs at the kitchen table, having an ordinary cup of tea. She pointed her wand at them. She took herself out of their memories. Every birthday, every school report, every morning at the breakfast table, every bedtime, every ordinary, unremarkable moment of being their daughter. Gone. She did not cry. She did not hesitate. She picked up her bag and she walked out of the house and she did not look back. Nobody asked her to do that. No prophecy required it. No Dumbledore planned it. No ancient magic demanded a Granger in exchange for a Potter. She looked at the situation and she made a calculation. And the calculation came out the same way it always did. Other people first, herself last. Hermione Granger didn't have to do any of it. That is what makes her the most extraordinary person in the entire series. And nobody talks about it. There is a version of Hermione Granger's story that gets told sometimes. In that version, she is the clever one, the rule follower, the know-it-all who grows into a hero. She is defined by her intelligence, valued for her usefulness, and credited, eventually, for her competence. That version is not wrong. It is not enough. Because it describes what Hermione could do. It says almost nothing about what she chose. Harry Potter was shaped by prophecy and loss, and a plan laid out for him before he could walk. Albus Dumbledore made choices for everyone, and called them love, and was not entirely wrong. Hermione Granger had no prophecy. She had no obligation. She was a Muggle-born witch from an ordinary family in Oxford, who was told at age 11 that she was magical, and who could have taken that magic and built an extraordinary private life with it, and gone home every Christmas to parents who remembered her name. She didn't. She looked at Harry Potter, lonely, hunted, entirely unprepared for what was coming. And she decided. Not because she was told to, not because the alternative was death, not because she had no other choice, because she looked at someone who needed help, and she did not look away. That is the thesis. Hermione Granger's entire arc is a 7-year study in what it costs to choose other people, freely, completely, without ever being asked to, and what is quietly, permanently lost in the choosing. Let's start at the end. Or what should have been the end, the moment that shows you everything about who Hermione Granger is. Before she leaves for the final year, before the tent and the forest and everything that follows, Hermione does something the books mention in a single sentence and never return to. She obliviates her parents. She removes herself from their memories entirely. She gives them new names, Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and she sends them to Australia, because Australia is as far from Voldemort's reach as she can manage. She makes them safe by making herself not exist to them. Think about that. Hermione Granger, age 17, performing one of the most advanced and painful pieces of magic in the series. Not on an enemy, not in battle. On her mother and father, in their own home, while they're smiling at her. She has to do it while they still trust her. She has to do it carefully enough that they don't notice it happening. She has to hold her wand steady. And she does. The books don't describe it in detail. We don't see her hands shake or her voice crack. We don't know if she stood outside the house afterwards for a long time, or if she went straight to Harry's, or if she stopped at all. We only know that she did it. And that when the war ends and she goes to find them, and she does go, she does find them, she does restore what she took. She never discusses it. Not really. Not in any way that lets us see what it cost. Because that is also who Hermione Granger is. She does the hardest thing. She does not ask to be witnessed doing it. Her name, right now, belongs to 2 people in Australia called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, who live a perfectly ordinary life. They don't know they have a daughter. She gave them that. Nobody asked her to. Here is the thing about Hermione Granger that gets treated as a joke. The Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, SPEW badges. A campaign. House elves who mostly didn't want to be freed, wearing hats they found offensive and hiding from the socks she hid in their work. Ron laughed at it. Harry tolerated it. The fandom mocks it. And underneath all the laughter, there is something that nobody wants to look at directly. Hermione Granger was 14 years old when she noticed an injustice everyone else had agreed to ignore. Not a new injustice. Not one that had recently got worse. An ancient, entrenched, institutionalized injustice that the entire wizarding world, including the people she respected most, had decided was simply how things were. House elves worked without pay, without rights, without the ability to leave. They were bound, legally and magically, to service. And everyone at Hogwarts ate the food they cooked without thinking about it. Hermione thought about it. She didn't stop thinking about it just because it was uncomfortable. She didn't let it go when Ron told her she was being annoying. She didn't soften the argument to make it easier to hear. She said, "This is wrong. I am going to do something about it. The fact that you find that inconvenient is not a reason to stop." She was wrong about the approach. She was clumsy about the execution. The hats and the hiding and the freedom by trick, that was a mess. But she was not wrong about the injustice. And here is the part that matters. She kept going. When people laughed, she kept going. When her campaign went nowhere, she kept going. When she was surrounded by people who thought it was a waste of time, people she loved, people whose opinion she valued, she kept going. Not because anyone asked her to. Not because it was working. Because she had looked at something true, and she did not have it in her to look away from true things. That is not a joke. That is a portrait of a person who has already decided who she is going to be. Third year, Hermione Granger is taking every class. Not most of the classes, not the interesting ones. Every class, including the ones that run at the same time, in different buildings, taught by different professors. She is doing this with a time turner, a device that lets her go back in time by 1 hour for every turn, and she is using it to study. Not to save anyone. Not for a mission, to study. Think about what this requires. She is sleeping less than anyone around her. She is living more hours in each day than her body is built for. She is managing the logistics of temporal displacement, being in 2 places at once, tracking which version of herself is where, never colliding with her past self in a corridor, on top of a full academic workload. And she doesn't tell anyone. Not Harry, not Ron, not until the time turner becomes relevant to saving Sirius Black, at which point it becomes a plot device, and she stops existing as a person again. But there is one scene, one moment where the camera turns, briefly, and shows you what this is actually costing. She drops divination. Not because she's told to, because Professor Trelawney tells her in front of the class that she has a gloomy aura, that she cannot see beyond the mundane, that she lacks the sight. And Hermione Granger, who has been running on 3 hours of sleep per night and quietly carrying a secret device that could destroy the fabric of time if she used it wrong, starts to cry. She doesn't say, "I'm exhausted." She doesn't say, "I've been doing the work of 2 people for 6 months and I cannot do one more thing." She cries. And then she picks up her bag and she leaves. That is the only crack in the 3rd year. One crack, briefly visible, quickly closed. She is 13 years old. She is carrying all of this alone. Nobody asked her to. If you've spent your life being the person who holds things together while everyone else falls apart, if you know what it is to be useful and invisible at the same time, you know what this video is about. Stay with it. We're getting to the part that matters. Year 7, the tent. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are on the run. They are moving constantly, sleeping in cold fields, eating little, doing nothing that feels like progress. The Locket Horcrux is poisoning the air between them, drawing out every fear, every resentment, every fracture that already existed, and making it wider. And then Ron leaves. He has been the worst of them in the tent. Angry, sullen, taking the locket's poison more completely than either of the others. He rounds on Harry. He says the things that the locket has surfaced in him. And then he walks out into the dark, and he disappears, and he doesn't come back. Harry is destroyed by it. He goes still. He stops eating properly. He sits by the entrance of the tent for hours at a time, looking at the place where Ron was. He is barely functional. And Hermione, who loves Ron, who has spent 6 years reaching for him and pulling back and pretending she doesn't care as much as she does, who has just watched him walk away, not from the mission, from her, stands up and keeps going. She researches, she plans, she maintains the wards, she cooks, she watches Harry, she manages everything. We see her cry once. Once, in a brief paragraph, she is described as weeping quietly while Harry pretends to sleep. And then morning comes and she is functional again. Nobody is thanking her. Harry is too lost in his own grief to notice what she is doing. Ron is gone. There is no one in that tent who sees what Hermione Granger is holding together with both hands and a will that will not break. But she holds it. She holds it through the winter. She holds it until Ron comes back. And when he does, when he has been away for weeks and she has carried this alone for all that time, she screams at him. Not with cruelty, not with the cold punishment of someone who has waited to wound. With fury, the fury of someone who has been abandoned with a job too heavy for one person, and kept going anyway, and is now finally allowed to feel the weight of it. She screams, and then it's over, and she moves on. That is also who Hermione Granger is. She does not carry grudges. She does not hoard her pain. She releases it in one clean moment and then she puts it away. Because there is still work to do. There is always still work to do. May 2nd, 1998. The final battle. Harry has gone to the forest to die. Hermione doesn't know that yet. She knows there is a battle. She knows people she loves are dying. She knows the castle is falling apart around her. She keeps fighting. And then it's over. The dark year. The tent. The Horcruxes, the deaths. It's done. Voldemort is gone. Harry survived, and Hermione Granger, who has been fighting beside Harry Potter since she was 11 years old, stands in the wreckage of Hogwarts and allows herself, finally, to stop. Here is what the books do not spend much time on. Hermione was prepared to die. Not in the abstract. Not in the way that everyone who goes into battle is prepared. She was prepared the way someone is prepared who has thought about it carefully and made peace with it. She was not in the prophecy. She was not a Horcrux. She had no ancient magic binding her to the outcome. She was there because she chose to be there, because 2 11-year-olds once needed help in a bathroom on Halloween, and she helped. And after that, she couldn't stop. That is the whole story. That is all it took. One act of choosing other people, and she never turned back. There is something Dumbledore says once about love as a power Voldemort doesn't understand, can't map, can't counter. He was talking about Harry. He should have been talking about Hermione, because Harry's love came from a prophecy, from a sacrifice made before he could walk, from a plan 17 years in the making. Hermione's love came from nothing but herself. She looked at someone who needed it, and she gave it. Again and again and again. Without being asked. Without being planned. Without being told it was necessary. Just because she decided that this is who she was going to be. Here is the question this story keeps asking. What does it cost? What does it cost a person to choose other people consistently from the age of 11 without ever putting themselves first? The books answer it quietly. In the edges. She doesn't sleep enough in 3rd year. She cries alone in the tent. She screams at Ron and then swallows the scream and moves on. She erases herself from her parents' memories and never fully explains what that was like. She is, in so many of the moments that count, invisible. Not to us. We see her. We always saw her. But inside the story, to the people making decisions, to the institutions with power, she is consistently the one who makes things possible and receives none of the credit for the making. The boy who lived, not the girl who kept him alive. And here is the thing about Hermione that makes this different from Snape, different from Dumbledore, different from every other character in this series who suffers quietly in service of something larger. She isn't bitter. She doesn't want the credit. She's not performing self-sacrifice to feel noble. She's not carrying martyrdom like a shield. She just sees what needs doing, and she does it. That is not ordinary. That is not something the series had the vocabulary to fully name. We called her bossy. We called her a know-it-all. We called her the clever one. None of those words are the right word. The right word is good. Not clever good. Not strategically good. Not good because she was raised right or good because she was afraid of the alternative. Just good. In the way that's so rare, we don't quite believe it when we see it. There is a house in Australia. 2 people live there. They are dentists. They are called Wendell and Monica Wilkins. They have a pleasant life. They have no children. They have no memory of a little girl who learned to read before she was 4, who got a letter at age 11 that changed the shape of everything, who spent 7 years carrying a world that was too heavy for any one person, and never once put it down. They have no memory of her face. They have no grave. Hermione found them after. She went to Australia and she stood in front of the house, and she restored what she had taken. She gave them their daughter back. The books don't describe what that was like either. What it was to knock on a door and wait for your parents to know you again. What it was to look at their faces while the memory returned. All of it. 17 years of it. Flowing back into them while she stood in a stranger's garden in a foreign country. We don't know if they were angry. We don't know if they cried. We don't know if they forgave her immediately, the way Harry forgave Dumbledore. We are not told. Because Hermione Granger's pain has always been the thing the story trusts us to fill in ourselves. She fought in a war at 17. She erased herself from her own family to keep them safe. She held together a mission that should have broken 3 people and only just broke 2. She was prepared to die for a boy she met in a bathroom when she was 11 years old. Nobody told her to do any of it. No prophecy named her. No plan required her. No ancient magic made her necessary. She just looked at what needed doing. And she did it again and again and again. Hermione Granger didn't have to do any of that. That is the whole point. That is the whole devastating point. Because the war was won by a prophecy and a sacrifice and a plan 17 years in the making. And it was held together, quietly, unglamorously, in cold tents and empty corridors and the small, dark hours before anyone else was awake. By someone who simply decided. That is not magic. That is something rare.